Hey babes, my name's Hannah.
And my name's Chasity.
Welcome back to Bookish Babes. So today we kind of have a more interesting video. We're going to be telling you guys books that we think everybody should read at least once in their life. I feel like this could be like a multi-part video because I narrowed it down to just 5, but I felt like there were tons more that I could put down.
Yeah.
And in preparation for this, I Googled this, and it's a lot of classics, and you're not going to see a lot of classics in ours.
No. So I feel like she said, there could be multiple parts. I feel like you could take this in a few different directions, and I feel like I took mine in a very specific direction. And I think mine is these are books that you need to read at least once in your life that are gonna make you uncomfortable.
And mine are very like social justice-esque. So yeah. I think we kind of took like a very serious turn to it. Yeah. But except for like the last one, that's not very social justice. But but it's still something everybody needs to read. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is actually on both of our lists. It's something that I read very recently, and I remember we talked about in the wrap-up that we felt like this was something that everybody needed to read. And it's Know My Name by Chanel Miller. She is the person that was raped by Brock Turner. Yes. And she wrote this book that was beautifully written about her life and her art and her feelings towards the situation and what it was like to go through the process of convicting somebody of sexual assault, and how in America it's not an easy process at all, not nearly as easy as it should be. No, it's ridiculous. She's picked apart, almost like they are suggesting that due to her behavior she was asking to be raped. Yeah,
that it's the victim's fault and not the rapist.
Yeah, and so it was hard to read, but it's important for everybody to read. I think especially men. I think men should have to read that.
I think everyone should have to read it.
Because it also she talks about other situations in her life where it's not super safe to be a woman sometimes.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. And this is something that I could go on and
on
and on.
And we kind of went on about it in the last video, so if you want to hear more thoughts about it,
check out our May reading wrap-up, right?
I think it was May.
I think it was May.
Yeah.
So the first one I think everyone should read at least once. It's probably not going to shock you guys. It's definitely my my soul book is usually what I call it. Mudvayne by Taryn Fisher. It's a little bit different, little bit of a tougher read, but I definitely suggest it. I think it should be read by everyone at least once. I know it is received differently by everybody. Yeah. But I think it's worth a read. That's about it.
It's one of the most interesting books that I've ever read because it's not like a typical novel.
No.
You don't read it like a typical novel. No. It's got a lot going on.
There's a lot.
The next one that I have is one of my all-time favorite books. Like if you asked me to name you my top 5 favorite books, this has to be in the top 5. It's The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I had to read this book in high school. I think it was my freshman or sophomore year. And it was one of the most beautiful books I've ever written. It was my very first tattoo. I have a lot of tattoos. My very first tattoo was on my shoulder, and it's a kite, and it's a quote from this book, and it says, "For you 1,000 times over." I think it's best to go into this book blind, but long story short, it's about 2 boys in a Middle Eastern country and how they have very different upbringings and very different financial situations, their families. So like one boy is the son of the other boy's father's servant. That makes sense.
Oh, okay.
But these boys are best friends. Yeah, and so I think that's the most beautiful part. And they kind of walk you through how the more rich boy makes a lot of mistakes in their friendship, but the more poor boy is like the most forgiving, understanding person to like ever live. And it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. I get why they have you read this in school, because it's something that a lot of kids I feel like need to read. I love it.
I don't think I haven't read this one. I need to.
You need to.
I absolutely do need to. The next one that I chose is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. It's been getting a lot of attention lately.
On Book Talk. Yes, I'm so happy about it.
I have been selling it like crazy at the bookstore, which I'm so excited about. This one, I really do believe that everyone needs to read it at least once, and not because it's one of my favorite authors, but because of how good of a damn story it is. It does, trigger warning, involve domestic violence. This one really, like, it just got me. Like, this was the first time that I really seen it in such a clear light. Like, and had you seeing it from all different points of view, like from even the abuser's view.
I think it's so important because I think it's easy for us to look at situations where there's domestic abuse involved and say like, well, why didn't she just leave?
And black and white.
Yeah.
Just black and white.
And this book does a really good job of, you know, she even says in the book, the character says in the book, like, the good times outweigh the bad times. And so that's how it was easy for her to brush it under the rug. And he, of course, had a very difficult past. Like, you almost feel like, in a way, not that you can't blame him, because you absolutely can blame him, but you know what I mean? He's not a villain. He's not a complete villain. And I think it does a good job of kind of
showing the humanity of it.
Yes. And that there's a very gray area when it comes to it.
Such a gray area.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important for everyone to read it.
I'm not surprised that it's getting a lot of hype.
I'm not either.
No,
it's fantastic.
And it's being made into a movie. So. The next one that I have is sort of basic, but I think that it gets a lot of hype and it's very popular because it's something that everybody needs to read, and that's The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. It does a really good job of showing what could happen if we let fundamentalists have control over our country. I don't feel like I need to talk a lot about it because obviously it's a show and a lot of people have watched the show even if you haven't read the book. And the first season of The Handmaid's Tale does a really good job of kind of like reenacting the book. So if you're not a reader, just watch the show. The show's really good also, but it does, like I said, it does a really good job of kind of showing us why separation of church and state is such an important thing, and it touches a lot on how women in a lot of cultures and religions and beliefs are viewed as less than, and like I said, very social justice-esque with this book. Is it something you've ever read? I think you should read it.
I need to though. Yeah. It's on my list.
Yeah.
And I've been getting more and more like interested in it recently, so definitely.
Yeah.
This next one you should read. Okay, so the next one that I chose was Me and Emma by Elizabeth Flock. This one, it's a very hard read. It's very heavy, but it definitely needs to be read. It shows what kind of damage can be done to a child when there is a child predator around. Oof. And when there are blissfully ignorant adults. It's heavy, it's hard, but it needs to be read, and it's damaging.
Yeah.
It's really damaging.
I do think books like this, like you said, are important to be read because it makes us all very aware of how easy it is to miss things like that, especially with children. It's not something I've ever read, so I don't know what it touches on, but it's something that I think about very often.
And you know, I don't want to, because there's a big part of this book that like you're not gonna fully understand until you read like towards the end, and I don't want to like ruin that for anybody, but like looking back after I finished the book, you really do realize how much like the adults that were in her life should have noticed more. And you're like, wait a minute. Like, there were so many signs, and everyone just kind of ignored it. So yeah, that I think these are the type of books that really need to be read because it helps raise awareness.
The next one I have is one that I think I've talked about before, very briefly. It's one that I want to reread soon because I haven't read it since freshman year of high school. It's Glory Fields by Walter Dean Myers. It's funny, every time I look this up, it gets very mixed reviews, but it's something that I remember really loving. It follows the same black family like through decades. So you start out with Muhammad, who is brought over to America from Africa to be a slave, and then you follow his bloodline all the way down to, you know, somebody during the 90s who's working as a hairstylist, and you get to see how being Black in America has changed, but not really.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the most interesting part, is watching people through, like, how they descend from his bloodline and how each generation, how their experience is very different from the previous generation, but also very different from the future generation. And it kind of gives you a lot of hope for racism in America. It's something that's like really enjoyable. And like I said, maybe this month I'll reread it because I'm curious to see if I resonate with it as much as I did. But I remember really feeling like I don't get why people have negative reactions to this book, because it's a really important one.
I want to read that.
Yeah.
We should do a reread together.
Yeah, we should.
Okay. We need to talk about Kevin by Lionel Shriver. This one is so important for so many reasons. This, again, is really heavy. It's one of the most disturbing books I've ever read. Mm-hmm. But it touches on some really big issues of, like, can a child really be born just completely messed up?
Oh, so it's like the nurture versus nature argument.
Or, like, just how much, like, how blind are the parents? How influential are the parents in creating monsters? Mm-hmm. This kid is so much.
That's a really interesting aspect to think about, you know?
Yeah, it really is. And just how, you know, like, also, like, how reliable is the narrator in this story? You know, like, there's so many different things to think about.
Who wrote it? Is it somebody, like, involved in the situation?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's something that, like,
I'm pretty sure.
So interesting because I
can't really remember, but I think I'm pretty sure it's just from the mom's point of view.
Oh, okay. But it's like, you know, anytime we talk about, like, a serial killer's past, of course they have hard, like, difficult childhoods, but, like, a lot of us have difficult childhoods and we don't end up becoming serial killers.
Yeah. So where does
does the line cross? You know,
where does the switch flip?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's interesting. So I think this book is so very important to read because it really gets you thinking.
Yeah.
I still haven't, to this day. I read this forever ago. Still haven't figured out whether I think he was just born bad or his parents influenced him. Yeah. So I don't know what that tells you, but I haven't made a decision.
Well, to take a little turn, my last one is much different from the books that we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. It's Harry Potter. And I, like, battled with putting this down because I feel like everybody who wants to read this book has at this point. But I still did because I still believe in my heart and soul that everybody should read this. There's nothing like the experience of reading Harry Potter for the first time. I wish so often that I could go back and experience that again. Yeah. Reading it and watching it for the very first time, because nothing will compare to it. I reread at least one Harry Potter book every single year. I've read the whole series several times, and it's something that every single time I pick up a new detail from it, and I feel a certain type of way about the imagery and the message behind it, and how important it is to... I feel like the whole underlying... I have my own opinions about the author, I really do, but I feel like she did a good job with the underlying message about how it doesn't matter where you came from. Yeah. That sort of situation. And I just feel like it's you know, it's so popular for a reason. Yeah. Sometimes books just aren't popular for any good reason, but Harry Potter is.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I have two more. Mm-hmm. The next one I chose was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, which I will just tell you right now, I was blown away because this was a debut and I thought it was so powerful, so well written for a debut. Mm-hmm. Again, this is going to go along with my theme of super dark, heavy, tough reads, but again, needs to be read. This is about a girl who is totally just groomed by her college professor. Again, raising awareness, showing all the signs. Mm-hmm. This stuff needs to be talked about more. It needs to be noticed. It needs to be read. I will talk about it until I'm blue in the face because it's something that's not talked about.
Grooming is something that I realize is it's a very new thing for people to talk about. Mm-hmm. It's a phrase that I hadn't heard at all ever until maybe a year or two ago. Yep. but it's something like I even just watched a show, Cruel Summer on Hulu if you haven't watched it. Very, very, very heavily focused. Sorry, I know you haven't watched it, so kind of spoiler alert.
I'm like halfway into it.
It's very heavily focused on the idea of grooming.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to talk about because it's easy for us to, with older children or like teenagers, to be like, oh, well, they're old enough to know better, but that's not always true.
No. They're
very impressionable.
Very.
And it's easy. It's easy for that to happen. It's easy for us to miss it. So, yeah.
It's very easy for us to miss it, and I think it's definitely something that needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
People need to be aware.
And I'm glad that some people are talking about it now.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely a book that I think everyone should read.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I'm just blown away by how well written it was.
I need to read. I own it. I've had it since it first came out. Like I have the hardback, so like I've had it since it first came out when like the paperback wasn't even out yet. And I just haven't read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
I had to put it down quite a few times. It's tough. It's a hard read.
Yeah.
She holds nothing back.
Okay. Yeah, I need to though.
So, you know, I definitely think you guys should all read it, but be prepared. It's gonna be tough. And then on a totally unrelated ending.
Oh, one of my favorites too.
I am going to recommend that everyone should read Verity by Colleen Hoover.
That's another one that Book Talk is blowing up lately.
Maybe not in the dark, in the middle of the night.
Yes, by yourself.
Definitely read it.
Yeah.
Man, it's so twisty. You're never gonna see it coming, and we of course need to know when you finish it whether you're a team letter or team manuscript.
And it's so interesting. I love books like that are so open-ended like that.
So open-ended. I also love that we did a book babble on it like over a year ago, and we still get comments like weekly on people telling us whether they're team manuscript or team letters. So please keep those coming because I love reading those.
I want to say we are both team manuscript, right?
We are both team manuscript.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm finding we don't get a lot of team letters.
No.
We do get a lot of team manuscripts. But
it's interesting.
It's interesting. And I love all the theories, so keep them coming because this one's definitely one of my favorites. So, but I think those are the only ones we had today. This is probably one that we can continue.
100%. I have a million more recommendations that I feel like everybody should read. So
definitely, and we could probably do them like themed because this was definitely, I took this one way and you took it another. We can probably do
except for Harry Potter, which was sort of the
just the whatever. Y'all should read it.
Yeah.
But I think that's it for us today. I definitely hit that like button. Comment down below. Let us know what you think about these. And subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when we post next. And we will see you next time. Bye.